So, good morning, everybody. Warm welcome back. It is quite warm, actually. Warm welcome back to the second day of the World Biogas Summit. Thanks to all of you who were here yesterday, and wonderful to see you all here this morning, particularly after last night. I hope those of you who came last night had a great time, and the alarm going off this morning wasn't too painful. I hope you also found yesterday a very productive experience. As I've said several times now, scaling up at the rate that we need to is going to require us to clearly understand the barriers that we're all facing to do that, but also to come up with creative solutions to find ways around those barriers. So I think events such as this are really important for doing that. Talking to each other is the best way to spark new ideas and new ways of doing things. I was also particularly delighted to have Jennifer Sara here yesterday, who is the Global Director for Climate Change Global Practice at the World Bank. It's absolutely critical that we have the development banks on board if biogas is going to be rolled out, particularly in the least developed regions of the world, which actually have the most potential for growth and therefore for impact. And as an engineer from the water industry, she was also exceedingly knowledgeable and had some great thoughts about ways in which we could try to make a difference, particularly from her background in the water sector, but also in her new role at the World Bank. And again, also particularly helpful that the World Bank is taking on the mantle of enabling, looking at how they can enable methane reduction, given the importance that we keep on highlighting and the world is now fixated on in terms of meeting the global methane pledge in 6 years and 9 months. So I'm going to look forward very shortly to our first keynote speaker of today, Hennadiy Zhuk, the professor and director at the Gas Institute NAS of Ukraine. Those of you who were here last year may remember Frans Timmermans tell us clearly that the EU sees biogas as a key sector for rebuilding the Ukrainian economy at this really tragic time. We're then going to hear from the chief energy economist at the International Energy Agency, Tim Gould. The latest annual energy report from the IEA predicts growth of our sector to be between 7 and 11.5 times what it is today between now and 2050. Now, that's obviously a really impressive growth rate. 13% between here and 2030 and 11% from 2050. But as you've probably understood by now, even if that's impressive, that's way off the level of growth that we need to see if we're going to achieve the methane reduction levels from organic wastes that we want the biogas industry to achieve this decade. And that's obviously why we meet here every year to discuss how we can accelerate that growth rate in a sustainable way. And of course, finance is critical to that. So I'm very pleased that our last keynote at this year's summit, Michael Ware from Green Giraffe, is going to be sharing his thoughts on how we can get more debt and equity into biogas projects. And then we're going to conclude with 2 panels that I am particularly passionate about, the Women in Biogas panel and emerging markets. As I've said numerous times now, diversity is absolutely key to business success, as so many excellent studies have already shown, especially when we need to be finding creative ideas to the solutions to the barriers that we're facing. Different perspectives, diverse perspectives, are really crucial to coming up to those ideas. And our Women in Biogas group was set up specifically to both attract more women into the industry, and broader diversity flows from that, but also to empower those women who are excellent women who are already amongst us. So very much looking forward to hearing from this group this afternoon. And then finally, our last panel will look into 3 key emerging biogas markets: India, Indonesia, and Brazil. Countries which have some of the greatest potential for growth and where biogas is already taking off. Hopefully you know that we recently launched a biogas market report on the Indonesian market, which you should be able to find on our website. And we will be launching a new one focusing on India, which we're preparing together with Invest India, which we will be launching at our first Congress event in New Delhi on the 25th and 26th of May. So I hope that those of you interested in the Indian biogas market will be able to join us there. And then we're also planning a second Congress event in Sao Paulo this autumn, together with Gabriel from Biogas, to celebrate, coinciding with your 10th anniversary. And I'm delighted, Gabriel, that you're here to be with us, and I'll be looking to joining us on the panel later as well. So now, without further ado, I'm delighted to pass the floor virtually to our keynote speaker, our first keynote speaker, Hennadiy Zhuk, Professor and Director at the Gas Institute, NAS of Ukraine. Hennadiy, over to you.
Hello, everybody, dear participants, dear colleagues. First of all, I want to appreciate Summer Summit organizers for possibility to represent situation and prospects for biomethane in Ukraine. As I present Research Gas Institute, I should emphasize on technology aspects of the issue. As you know, there is a war in my country now, caused by a Russian invasion. But we are all believe in our defense forces, our foreign friends support. Thank you to all. And we are looking forward to new sustainable developments and low carbon economics for Ukraine and for... Next slide, please. Now you can see that before the war, Ukraine already had 31 landfills power plants with installed power electricity, 32 megawatts, and produce about 100 gigawatt hour electricity annually. And 22 anaerobic digestion biogas power plants with installed power of that produced more than 300 gigawatt hour electricity annually. Next slide, please. So you can see here a list of landfill gas producers, landfill gas users, and you can see two big stakeholders, company LNK and Clear Energy. And the next slide. Here you can see the list of several bigger anaerobic digestion biogas companies. All of them produce only electricity, no biomethane, and the average effectiveness of producing electricity is about 50%. But in my whole opinion, Ukraine needs methane more than electricity. Next slide. Last at least 1.5 years, natural gas price overhead the biomethane production cost in Ukraine. It's about 50 euros per megawatt hour. But in our case, besides price, it is very important to have gas fuel itself. Next slide. According to data kindly given by Bioenergy Association of Ukraine, you can see the real potential of biomethane production is estimated about 10 billion cubic meters annually. It's a rather big potential. And you can see also that main regions are now controlled by Ukraine, by our forces. And about 75% of the potential belongs to residuals of agriculture. Next slide, please. So here you can see a typical calculation of Ukrainian biogas plant if it have a transmission to biomethane production, and is looking as following. For example, the largest in Ukraine Teofipol plant is of 15 megawatt electricity capacity. The total investment to build such a plant is about 40 million euro. And the production rate is about 6,000 cubic meters biogas per hour. So if we want to compensate our electric green tariff on electricity, in the case of consumption 1 kilowatt hour per production of cubic meter of biomethane, so the competitive price on biomethane will be 500 euro per 1,000 cubic meters. Please, next slide. As for me, for our opinion, the most competitive way of biomethane using in Ukraine seems vehicle refueling. Compressed gas is a good idea regarding developed net here in Ukraine, and our institute in 1990s make a big input in this issue. Up till 1 million of vehicles here can consume up to 1 billion cubic meters of biomethane annually. And it is about 10% of total commercial vehicle amount. Next slide, please. The second issue of biomethane using is LNG or LBG station for refueling. But unfortunately in Ukraine this branch is not developed at all. So we have not LNG or LBG fueling station. But we have potential for use it for small and medium ships along river Dnipro, converted diesel city buses, high load trucks or carrier trucks, and supply for regions with methane if pipelines is absent or destroyed. Please, next slide. We succeeded to build laboratory equipment for LNG production, combined several options. Use compression, throttle effect, refrigeration cycle, heat recoveries, and have simulated several types of cycles with 40% liquefaction coefficient and rather low energy consumption. Next slide, please. The most big experience we have, and I think we have a leading position in Ukraine here in the research of landfill gas. including drilling, gas analysis, production rate, feasibility. For example, for 7 landfills were inspected in Ukraine. Next slide, please. It was the first Ukraine biogas extraction system from landfill with electricity generation to national grid, and it was implemented by LNK company and our specialists in the year of 2012. The installed power was 1 megawatt, and further the power has been increased to 2 megawatt. Next slide, please. Today we have 7 implemented stations with total installed power more than 7 megawatts. Next slide, please. Today in Ukraine, all extracted or produced biogases is used for electricity production. But biogas can be a source of biomethane and carbon dioxide commercial product. Next slide, please. To separate methane from biogas, we carry out research with original modified amine water solutions. Also, methane technology takes over and water absorption is very used, but proposed amine separation have some benefits. For example, the energy consumption decreased by 1.5 to 2 times in comparison with regular amine solution. And in 2018, first Ukraine laboratory setup of biogas separation was created. Next slide, please. Also, our achievement is landfill biomethane positively affects on power generation. 3 years of experience of 50 kilowatt power station exploitation in city of Kamenets-Podilsky shown fuel consumption decrease and power increase with methane concentration rising. Next slide, please. So about our energetics and our fuels, you can see that using the potential of biogas and biomethane becomes very significant in wartime. About $7 billion are losses in energy infrastructure due to the Russian invasion last year. You can see that power drops in different types of generation 30 to 90%. And generation from biogas power stations supply electricity for local consumers. Not much, but stable. Next slide, please. And other aspect you can see at fuel balance needs for Ukraine is a very huge amount of import. It's about % in coal, more than 80% in oil products, and 30% in natural gas. So biogas and biomethane can solve this problem. at least partially, by electricity generation, natural gas replacement in pipelines, compressed biomethane for methane vehicles, and liquefied biomethane for vehicles and pipe out transmission. Next slide, please. Now, for regulation, our biomethane activity in Ukraine, supported by following documents you can see, is world and European documents, and the national documents is national waste management strategy, alternative fuels law regarding on development on biomethane production, and also a law on waste management, and the main is memorandum between Ukraine and European Union on biomethane, hydrogen, and other synthetic gases. And we have a recovery plan of Ukraine after war, and it includes development of biofuel production and needs an investment about 3 billion United States dollars to achieve goal of 2 billion cubic meters annually of biomethane. Next slide, please. And some words about our efforts in hydrogen technology. It's producing, transportation, burning for hydrogen, and so on. But for me, it's very interesting and perspective works. We do combine hydrogen and methane issues. For example, it's for synthetic methane production from green hydrogen with carbon dioxide using, and gasification of biomass using electrolysis oxygen. Next slide, please. And some words about very interesting, very big object is the Ukrainian pipeline. It is huge construction, has 40,000 kilometers of main gas pipelines and very big distribution pipelines. To supply biomethane to the Sorry. Some technical problems. And oxygen restriction seems very hard. But our government makes all the best to successful biomethane supply into the pipe, and oxygen content limit was increased 10 times for main pipelines and up to 1% for distribution pipelines. Next slide, please. So I propose as a conclusion what Ukrainian advantages to produce the biogas, biomethane, and so on. It's a huge amount of organic residuals. It's agriculture, manure, municipal solid waste, etc. Second is large natural gas pipeline system and supply infrastructure. Large market of natural gas consumers, export possibilities, and large underground storages we have here in Ukraine. Digestate is strongly required by agricultural producers. And we have a big technological and scientific potential here. And next slide. And otherwise, what are we needs here in Ukraine? First of all is financial support. For example, as I shown earlier, for producing annually 2 billion cubic meters of biomethane, we require more than $3 billion. But if it will be 10 times more biomethane, so maybe the financial needs is 30 billion. And also, of course, we need technological support, equipment such as compressors, membranes, materials, anaerobic digestion equipment, and so on. Next slide, please. Sorry, next slide. Thank you, and I want to say thank for your kind attention, and I'm ready for questions and of course for maybe future collaboration. Thank you much.
Hennadiy, thank you so much. That was a fascinating overview of the opportunities and potential for biomethane in Ukraine, and obviously one of the advantages of biomethane has always been providing countries with energy independence, which in the current circumstances that has to be something of particularly attractive at the moment. So I'm going to, given that you've set out the opportunities so well, I'm hoping we have people in the audience who might be interested in taking advantage of those opportunities or finding ways to support Ukraine to develop biomethane infrastructure. Any questions that we have? Thomas. Here's it, Mike.
Thank you very much for the presentation on the opportunities in Ukraine, but also best wishes to Ukraine for the coming months ahead. I wondered how much you had thought about the opportunities for biogas and biomethane not connected to the grid. Obviously, in current situations, the gas network might be compromised to a certain extent, but it doesn't mean that farming systems wouldn't be able to create the biomethane in a way that didn't need a connection to the grid network, and I think that would be a significant opportunity.
So thank you for your question, and I want to say that now, of course, in the situation of war, we don't. The main question was what the market for fuels, what's the price for fuels. The question states that is any fuel available? So now it's very hard to forecast something, but now we are working. So our producers of agricultural residuals and so on are working. So we have raw material. and want to develop the biomethane, biogas infrastructure, industrial, and so on. But of course, the main hopes we have with after-war period, and we needs in financial, in technologies, and so on after war.
Thank you. Another question at the back.
Thank you very much. Dominic White from Cargill. We now have a biomethane register in Ukraine. We've seen the first cross-border flows of guarantee of origins. We have this MOU with the EU. How long, what are the timeframes that you see with regards to getting guarantee of origin flows across the borders more normalized? And what are the challenges in place today, if you have a view on that?
Please repeat your question.
Sorry. Moving the guarantee of origin, the certificates, across the border into mainland Europe, where hopefully people can pay more. What are the challenges to doing that today? And do you have any view on the timeframes to fix them?
Okay. Indeed, our government and, as I said, have make a lot of things to biomethane infrastructure, biomethane production stimulate. And one of these is quotes, is certificates for biomethane producers. Now we have such law implemented, and this mechanism of biomethane production, of biomethane certificates, of biomethane supplying to the pipeline is now under construction. So as for my opinion, it may be about half of a year or several months to start it.
Thank you, Hennadiy, and thank you very much indeed for joining us and setting out the opportunities and potential for biomethane in Ukraine. We wish you all the best trying to make that, turn that opportunity into reality. But I hope the audience will now join me in thanking you for your excellent presentation and thoughts on how we can make it happen in Ukraine. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. And I suppose for further fruitful collaboration.
Thank you.